When it comes to intimacy, most men assume loyalty is straightforward. You give your heart, your time, your protection, and in return you expect fidelity. But relationships are rarely that simple. Women, just like men, are capable of keeping secrets. And sometimes, if you're observant enough, you will notice that something has shifted. Not always in what she says, but in how she behaves. There are signs, subtle, often brushed aside, that reveal when a woman has just been with another man. The first sign is an abrupt emotional distance. It's as if an invisible wall goes up between you and the warmth you're used to suddenly cools. She's there physically, but her eyes betray her thoughts. She avoids your gaze, or she holds it too long as though trying to convince both you and herself that nothing has changed. Then there's the change in routine. Women are creatures of habit. When her patterns suddenly shift, when she's busier, more secretive with her phone, or oddly defensive about her whereabouts, these are not coincidences. They're cover stories. She may laugh them off as harmless, but deep down, you know her rhythm has been interrupted. Another sign is how she treats intimacy with you. After sleeping with another man, many women feel a mix of guilt and comparison. Some will withhold closeness, unable to give themselves to you because they feel tainted by what they've done. Others may overcompensate, more affectionate than usual, almost performative, hoping you won't sense the truth. Both extremes are revealing if you pay attention. Watch for changes in her physicality too. A woman who's just been with someone else carries herself differently. Sometimes it's a new energy, a certain glow, or a restless shift in her body language. She may shower more, change her perfume, or suddenly feel the need to freshen up before seeing you. These small details often say more than her words ever will. Jealousy is another tell. If she suddenly becomes critical of you, picking fights, accusing you of things without reason, it may not be projection alone. It's her way of justifying her betrayal, painting you as the guilty one so she can quiet her own conscience. And finally, pay attention to silence, the absence of conversation. Where there used to be openness is a language of its own. When she stops sharing the little details, when she hides behind vague answers or dismisses your curiosity, she's not simply tired, she's protecting a secret. The truth is, most men don't want to see these signs because it hurts too much, but ignoring them doesn't change reality. Betrayal doesn't arrive with a dramatic announcement. It slips quietly into the cracks of a relationship, leaving traces only the watchful will detect. The choice then is yours, to look away and live in denial, or to face what those signs are telling you, because once you recognize them, you can no longer pretend not to know. And in that moment, you must decide what loyalty means to you and whether you're willing to accept anything less. When a man is in a relationship, he often believes that his instincts can be switched off, that love requires blind trust. And yet our instincts were never meant to be ignored. They were honed over thousands of years to protect us from betrayal, from danger, from wasting our energy where it is not respected. The first and perhaps most painful sign that a woman has been unfaithful is not found in her words, but in her behavior. You can't always rely on what she tells you, but you can certainly rely on the shift you feel in the way she carries herself around you. When emotional distance enters a relationship, it's not subtle if you dare to pay attention. She used to smile easily when you walked through the door, and now she barely looks up from her phone. She used to lean in when you spoke, even about the most ordinary things, but now she looks distracted, as though her mind is somewhere else, because in truth it is. Love and intimacy create a closeness that can't be faked for long. When another man enters her life, even briefly, her ability to look at you in the same way is disrupted. There's hesitation in her touch, or maybe her touch disappears altogether. These things don't happen randomly. They are a signal that something has shifted at the core of your bond. It's easy for men to dismiss these changes. You tell yourself she's stressed, tired, or simply moody. You rationalize because you don't want to confront the possibility of betrayal. But deep down, you can feel the difference. Human beings are finely tuned to notice changes in those closest to us. The difference between warmth and indifference between closeness and detachment is not difficult to sense. It's only difficult to admit. Then there's the way she guards her time. Routine is one of the most revealing aspects of anyone's life. People create patterns because they bring security, comfort, and predictability. But when those patterns are disrupted without a clear explanation, it's rarely accidental. If she once called you at lunch every day, but now claims she's too busy, or if she suddenly works late with unusual frequency, these are not innocent changes. They are gaps in the story she's presenting to you, cracks in the facade. She may cover them with excuses, but excuses don't erase the fact that her rhythm has altered, and nothing in a relationship alters without cause. You'll also notice defensiveness creeping in. Questions that would once have been answered openly are now met with irritation. You ask, what kept you? And instead of a simple reply, you get a sharp tone or an accusation that you're being controlling. This is not genuine frustration. It's a tactic. A guilty conscience often lashes out to protect itself by buying you feel as though you're unreasonable. She diverts attention away from her own secret. That shift in tone, that unwillingness to be transparent, is as loud as any confession. But perhaps the most telling change lies in intimacy. Guilt is a powerful emotion, and it rarely sits quietly. For some women, guilt makes them withdraw completely. She no longer initiates closeness. Her affection feels forced or absent. For others, guilt produces the opposite reaction. She becomes suddenly attentive, almost overly affectionate, as though she's trying to erase the evidence of her betrayal with exaggerated care. Both extremes are unnatural. Both break the ordinary rhythm of your connection, and both point toward the same hidden truth. When you've shared real intimacy with someone, you can feel when it has been compromised. A kiss doesn't linger the same way. A hug feels lighter, like she's holding back. Even in silence, the tension hums. This is not paranoia, it's perception. What men must learn is to trust these perceptions rather than bury them under the comfort of denial. And there's something else worth mentioning: comparison. After being with another man, she may unconsciously compare the two of you. She might act differently in bed, either withdrawing as though she no longer desires you, or experimenting in ways that seem out of character. Women often reveal what they've been exposed to without meaning to. If she suddenly wants to try something new or avoids intimacy altogether, both are clues that her experience has shifted in a way that didn't originate with you. All of this comes down to attentiveness. Men who ignore these changes tell themselves they are protecting their relationship, but in reality, they're protecting themselves from the pain of the truth. A woman doesn't need to say she's been unfaithful. Her behavior says it for her, and if you're brave enough to listen to the language of her actions, you will see the story clearly. The tragedy is that most men do notice. They feel the coldness, the distance, the secrecy. They sense it in their gut, but they suppress it. They would rather live in the illusion of loyalty than confront the reality of betrayal. But illusions don't last, and pretending not to see the signs won't prevent what has already happened. It only delays the inevitable reckoning. So the question is not whether you can detect these changes. You can. The question is whether you are willing to act on what you see, whether you're willing to accept that her behavior is no longer aligned with the bond you believed you shared. Because once that realization sinks in, you can never look at her the same way again. And perhaps that is the point. These signs are not meant to torment you. They are meant to free you from a lie, to remind you that your instincts are not an enemy, but a guide. What's striking about betrayal is that it rarely hides in silence. It reveals itself in contradictions, in inconsistencies that play out in both her body and her emotions. A woman who's given herself to another man is often caught between two forces: her guilt and her need to maintain the illusion of loyalty. These opposing pressures create behavior that doesn't make sense on the surface, but to a man who is paying attention, the truth begins to shine through. One of the clearest signs is overcompensation. When she feels guilty, she may try to drown that guilt under exaggerated displays of affection. She suddenly becomes more tender, more attentive, as though hoping that by lavishing you with kindness, she can erase the evidence of what she's done. But this affection often feels too much. too sudden, almost staged. It's not the natural, easy closeness of a woman at peace. It's a performance carefully designed to distract you, and if you pay attention, you'll notice the edges of that performance fray, a kiss that feels a little hollow, words of love spoken with a strange urgency, gestures that seem rehearsed rather than spontaneous. The opposite can also be true. Instead of overcompensating, she may withdraw. For some women, guilt becomes a wall, making intimacy feel unbearable. When she lies beside you but avoids your touch, when her body tenses where it used to relax, when her desire evaporates almost overnight. These are not random fluctuations. They're symptoms of comparison. She cannot give herself to you in the same way, because part of her has already been given elsewhere. And even if she doesn't consciously compare you to the other man, her subconscious does it for her. Comparison is insidious. It reveals itself in tiny, unsettling changes. She may suddenly experiment in bed, trying something she's never shown interest in before, or she may shy away from physical closeness entirely, as if preserving her body from being claimed twice in the same space of time. Either way, the shift is unnatural. You know her patterns, you know her appetite, you know the rhythm of your connection. When that rhythm suddenly falters or accelerates without explanation, it is not because she simply woke up feeling different. It is because something external has disrupted her. Then there are the physical traces she tries to cover. A change in scent, a different perfume, a freshly washed body at odd times of day. Some men dismiss these things as coincidences, but when a woman suddenly becomes meticulous about hiding her natural state before she sees you, it is rarely innocent. It is the behavior of someone who feels the need to erase evidence, even if you're not consciously looking for it. Her body language betrays her too. She may appear restless, distracted, unable to fully relax in your presence, or in contrast, she might act unusually bubbly, brimming with a nervous energy that doesn't quite match the moment. These contradictions are not accidental. They are the emotional fallout of betrayal. You will also notice that her emotional tone becomes inconsistent. One day she is unusually warm, showering you with attention. The next she is cold and critical. This is the tug-of-war of guilt. When she feels remorseful, she leans into affection. When the weight of her actions becomes unbearable, she projects it onto you, snapping at you for trivial things, accusing you of flaws that have nothing to do with the issue at hand. In reality, she is not angry with you. She is angry with herself, but turning that anger inward would force her to face her own choices. So instead, she turns it outward and you become the target. This is why contradictions are such a powerful sign. A woman who has nothing to hide is consistent. She may have moods, she may get upset, but there is a rhythm to it, a logic you can follow. Betrayal scrambles that logic. It leaves her swinging between extremes, clinging to affection one moment and withdrawing into coldness the next. That inconsistency is the shadow of another man's presence. The painful truth is that many men sense these contradictions immediately. When the kiss feels different, when her laughter doesn't quite reach her eyes, when her body is tense, when her warmth feels manufactured, when the spontaneity of your connection has been replaced by something strained. What men often lack is the willingness to confront the reality. It is easier to tell yourself she is stressed, tired, hormonal, anything but unfaithful, because once you name it, once you admit it, you cannot go back. The illusion shatters, and with it, the comfort you've built around the idea of her loyalty. But illusions, no matter how comforting, cannot survive reality. And contradictions, no matter how small, cannot be smoothed over forever. They accumulate, they grow louder, until even the most willfully blind man can no longer pretend not to see. At that point, the choice is no longer about whether you notice, it's about whether you value yourself enough to act. A woman who has betrayed you might believe she can mask her actions with affection or conceal them with distance. But human beings are not designed to carry such duplicity gracefully. It leaks through in her words, her touch, her movements, her silences. And if you are brave enough to trust your perception, to see the contradictions for what they are, then you already hold the truth in your hands. The question is not whether she has changed, and she can feel that she has. The real question is whether you will trust your instincts or betray yourself by ignoring them. Because in the end, the worst betrayal is not hers. It is when a man sees the signs, feels the truth, and still chooses to look away. Silence is not neutral. It speaks, even when no words are uttered. In fact, silence often says more than speech ever could. When a woman has crossed the line of fidelity, she does not always confess with her lips. More often she confesses through what she refuses to say. This is one of the most telling signs, and one that men too often dismiss. They take her quietness as stress, fatigue, distraction. But silence, in the context of betrayal, is not rest. It is concealment. Think about how she used to speak to you, the little details she would share without prompting, what she had for lunch, who she bumped into on the way to work, what she thought about a conversation with a friend. That openness was not trivial. It was a sign of intimacy, of comfort, of a mind unafraid to be transparent. When that openness disappears, when her answers become vague, clipped or deliberately evasive, it is rarely because she has suddenly grown tired of talking. It is because she has something to protect. A woman who has been unfaithful cannot speak freely without the risk of slipping. Every innocent question becomes dangerous. Where were you is suddenly a trap. Who were you with feels like a test. Even if you ask casually, she hears suspicion, and so she retreats into silence. She keeps her answers short. She changes the subject. She bristles at your curiosity, accusing you of being controlling or paranoid, when all you have done is ask the same questions you have always asked. This defensiveness is a shield, because deep down she knows that her words could betray her. Notice the shift in how she shares her day. Before, she would offer details freely, without effort. Now you have to pull them from her, and even then what she offers feels thin, incomplete. You can sense the missing pieces, the parts she has trimmed away. She no longer invites you into her inner world. She keeps you at the threshold, feeding you fragments rather than the whole story. That shrinking of intimacy is not just a mood. It is the sound of a door closing. And then there are the silences that stretch longer than usual, the pauses before she answers a simple question, the hesitation that didn't exist before. That pause is her mind calculating, editing, preparing a safe response. Genuine intimacy does not require editing. It flows naturally without fear, but a guilty conscience forces her to measure every word, to consider what might reveal too much. And in those pauses, you hear the truth. She is not being careless, she is being careful. Silence can also manifest as withdrawal from conflict, arguments, disagreements, even passionate debates. Once had energy, now she refuses to engage. She avoids confrontation, not because she has suddenly become calmer, but because engaging risks exposure. She fears slipping up, revealing too much in anger. So she swallows her feelings and hides behind silence. A man might misinterpret this as maturity, as growth, but silence in this form is not peace. It is fear. There is also the silence of the body, the absence of laughter, where it once came easily, the way she lies next to you but faces away, the lack of small talk, jokes, or playful teasing that used to knit you together. These gaps are as loud as any confession. A relationship is built not only on words, but on the unspoken exchange of energy. When that energy dims, when the spaces between you grow wider and colder, it is not an accident. Something or someone has intruded. And then comes the defensive silence. When you ask questions and she shuts down completely, she may refuse to answer, walk away, or insist she doesn't want to talk about it. This is not the silence of a woman who is simply tired. It is the silence of a woman cornered. Silence here is not emptiness. It is a strategy, a way to avoid digging a hole with her own words. What makes this silence so painful is that it erodes trust slowly. It's not as dramatic as a shouted argument or an obvious lie. It creeps in quietly, one short answer at a time, until one day you realize you no longer know what's happening in her world. And that realization is devastating, because intimacy dies not in an explosion, but in the slow, suffocating absence of sharing. Men often ignore this sign because they want to believe that silence is harmless. They tell themselves, she is busy, she's stressed, she simply needs space. But silence, when combined with other shifts, defensiveness, secrecy, emotional distance, is never harmless. It is evidence of something withheld, something she does not want you to know. And the truth is, you always know. You feel it when her silence grows heavier than her words. You feel it when conversations that once flowed are now labored. You feel it when you ask yourself why she no longer speaks to you the way she used to. That ache in your gut is not paranoia, it is perception. The choice, as always, is whether you will listen to that perception or bury it under excuses, whether you will accept silence as her answer or demand the honesty that intimacy requires, because silence may not sound like a confession, but it is one all the same. And if you are willing to hear it for what it is, then you already know the truth she is trying so hard not to say.